Today's webinar is about preparation required to strive for operational excellence through Australasian TPM Lean. Presenting the session today is Ross Kennedy. Ross is the president and founder of CTPM, a team of business improvement coaches. He is recognized as Australasia's leading authority on total productive maintenance and CTPM's Australasian TPM Lean approach to operational excellence. So let's get started with today's session, and I'll now pass you over to Ross.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Well, good afternoon to our friends from New Zealand, and good morning for all those on the east coast of Australia, to our 65th webinar. And our topic today is preparation required to strive for operational excellence. And we put this webinar together based on, again, feedback from our members, and we're seeing a number of members who, most, I think, sites have started their journey on to operational excellence, but in a lot of cases, what we're seeing is progress hasn't been as well as expected. And what we reflected on was that maybe the preparation you did before you started may not have been as robust as it should have been, and therefore let's reflect back on and see, well, what sort of preparation should be done to ensure, as we put the efforts into our operational excellence journey, or transformation as most people tend to call it these days, it's going to give us the best return. So I've identified 7 topics or areas we want to cover. The first one is, what approach are we taking? The second one is, what sort of governance do we have for the journey or transformation? Then the effort that we need to put in. So what time frame have we given ourselves, and what rate of improvement are we looking at? Fourth one is baseline. Have we really established sufficient baselines to see what impact we're having? And also, have we really set targets so we can see, as we progress our transformation, are we really having the impact we expected? The next one is purpose. Have we got a clear purpose of what we're trying to achieve, as in having our improvement visions and other relevant visions? And then it's, how well are we controlling the journey? What discipline do we have? How structured are we in our approach? And finally, roles and accountabilities. Who's got specific roles here? Do they understand what their roles are, and are they really fulfilling those roles? So they're the 7 areas we want to cover off today, and hopefully you'll find it of some help. And if you have any questions along the way, please do not hesitate to notify us, and Nelson will raise them up with me. Right, to get started, we use this slide, the 3 critical parts of a continuous improvement strategy to achieve operational excellence. And I think this sort of encapsulates what we need to think about as we go down our operational excellence journey or transformation. And that is, one, we have expectations each day of running the business. And if we don't achieve those expectations, how well do we get back to where we should be and stop those problems from happening again? That's what we call reactive improvement. We have the need to stabilize the production plan for at least 50% of the time, so that we can do formal structured improvement activities. And thirdly, it's the actual proactive improvement, getting up there. And we need to think about all these things in an improvement journey, because what we've found is, if companies aren't doing 1 and 2 well, it consumes a lot of time with people continually addressing reoccurring problems, or firefighting because things keep changing in the production plan or work plan all the time, and you don't even get time to put into, or you get distracted from, your improvement activities to take you to your operational excellence. So this is what leads into this cherry picking and holistic approach, thinking what we've, I guess, identified and what's been learned. And if I refer to Professor Jeffrey Leica in his book, The Toyota Way to Continuous Improvement, now this book was written some 7 years after he wrote the book, the famous book, The Toyota Way, 14 Management Principles that created the greatest manufacturing company in the world. He was talking about Toyota, obviously. And then 7 years later, after applying a lot of those principles, reflecting on what worked, what didn't work. And he wrote about the fact that there's two approaches to the Lean, TPM and Lean journey. There's the mechanistic approach, which is what most companies sort of first embarked on. And this is treating the workplace like a machine that requires tools to fix. Hence, when problems occur, picking the best tools to solve the problem. So we might have a long setup, so we'll rush in and have a setup reduction team, or we might have workplaces disorderly, so we'll rush in and put 5S into the place. We might have reoccurring quality issues, so we might introduce root cause analysis and start teaching people about root cause analysis, etc. And this is what I guess is encapsulated in this little diagram where we say, well, you have a work group or work area, and we go in there and we introduce improvements like putting fire in, and it's almost like the laws of heat transfer. They call the second law of thermodynamics, to be technical, but basically if you get a hot cup of coffee and put it on your desk, after a period of time, if you don't drink the coffee, the heat will dissipate out of the coffee and it will come back to room temperature. And that's what they found happens with improvement, or what Jeffrey Leica found, was that they would go and do their improvement activities using the tools, getting good results, but then when they moved on to another area, a different work group, the heat would dissipate out of the improvement activity, so to speak, and you'd go back to where you were. So in other words, you don't get sustainability of your improvements. And that's why he came up with this concept of organic approach, which is recognizing a systemic view of the workplace, treating the workplace like a living organism that requires nurturing, hence requiring many activities need to be working in concert. So in other words, our organizations are a lot more complex. Toyota certainly found this out when they started to, or try to implement TPM, and they realized there was a number of activities they had to do to, I guess, get prevention at source to equipment, like training, finding time, getting time available to develop new skills, training operators to find defects, changing maintenance to respond rapidly, changing the equipment so it's easy to find the defects, having a stable production plan so they could do regular claim for inspections, etc. It's all this recognizing there's a number of integrated activities that are required. And what they learned from that is using this heat transfer concept again. You have your work group and you go in there and you recognize that once you start in a work group or work area, you've got to keep going. You've got to keep doing activity after activity after activity. And we often will start with cross-functional teams to free up time and then move into area-based teams as you continue on with your cross-functional team. So your cross-functional team might look at all the losses in the area to understand what the situation is. Then the next teams might look at specific issues and losses. Meanwhile, you would get ongoing improvement with your production area-based teams looking at initially work area management or enhanced 5S, and then moving on to operator equipment management or autonomous maintenance to understand how to care for the equipment, understand the functioning of it, and diagnose problems at the earliest possible time to assist maintenance. So this is what the concept is. You start in your area and you keep it going. And what Jeffrey Leica concluded in his book was mechanistic approaches do not sustain. We've got to take an organic approach, which is a holistic approach rather than just grabbing, cherry-picking individual tools. We also use this slide, which is about deductive versus inductive approaches, which again looks at Do we just do one approach? Deductive is about being detectives, using our Pareto charts, picking the biggest losses and going in and putting teams in, project teams to go and look at those losses and try to improve them. And that's very good, and we certainly need to do it. But what we also learned was that we need to, especially when we're applying prevention at source, things like work area management, 5S, and operator equipment management, autonomous maintenance, is that you need to take an inductive approach, which is addressing all the little losses by making sure everything is right. So getting rid of all the equipment defects, getting rid of excessive movement in the workplace, etc. And we're using, for example, production area-based teams to do this, as opposed to cross-functional teams addressing the big losses. And our learning is we need to do both. And as you do your inductive, getting things right, you'll find that the losses actually reduce. The big losses reduce and narrow down as you take the noise out of them. So again, holistic approach, doing deductive, inductive. So the question is whether you are on your operational excellence journey or transformation cherry picking, or are you taking this organic, holistic approach, recognizing the importance of both deductive, inductive, addressing the Pareto chart from both ends. So that's point one. Point two, having a separate improvement leadership team, or do you blend into the current management structure, management team? Now, we believe the responsibilities of site management is twofold. One is running the business and improving the business. So running the business is ensuring the production of the work plan is achieved by applying effective reactive improvement so as to develop your frontline leaders. They can help improve the business. So the running the business is ensure the production of work plan is achieved, and then you have your point one of reactive improvement to develop your frontline leaders, because what you're trying to do is to get this prevention at source concept working, which is the foundation of operational excellence, and it's the frontline leaders who can do it. And your frontline leaders are your wages leaders who can step in and take over for the role of an operator while the operator goes off and is on, for example, a cross-functional improvement team. So they're not doing that all the time, but they might do that for 1 or 2 hours a day. The rest of the time they are leading the group to achieve the production plan, ensure frontline safety, ensure frontline quality, etc. The second thing, we've got to stabilise the production of work plan by applying flow logic to stop firefighting and create time for improvement. So if we don't get rid of the firefighting and we don't stop problems from reoccurring, we're going to really struggle ensuring the achieving the production plan and also having time for improvement. And then finally, the improvement of the business is improve the way the production of work plan is achieved by through proactive activities such as technology, automation, project and events, and ongoing improvement. So what we're suggesting is that we need a site management team to say, hey, we have two roles: running the business, which is our normal management roles, and then secondly, leading it. And we would suggest you split that up, 2 separate meetings. Don't try to combine it in amongst the same, because you'll get blurry. So initially split it. Later on, when you get really good at it, yes, you may be able to combine it. But we would strongly suggest that you do establish a specific site operational excellence leadership team for improving the business, along with a clearly defined and resource structure, such as a full-time operational excellence coordinator. And later on, as you cascade across the site, you might want more than one coordinator, and that should be a full-time role. It's like operational excellence will increase the capacity of your plant by 20 to 50%. Now, if you did that without doing improvement, just did it as a project and went and said, let's go build an extra 25% or 50% of our site, you would need at least a full-time project manager to do that, minimum. So the investment in a full-time coordinator is a real must and well justified. Second thing, establish and agree on the order of the site's key success factors for operations to assure goal alignment. We need everyone on the same page. We need goal alignment. So the way we do that is we look at what, using the cause and effect concept, what are the causes stopping us from achieving the effect we want, which is getting return on investment for our business or our site. And up the top is an example of different key success factors which will cause you to either, if you get them right, to be successful with your return on investment. If you get them wrong, you will obviously miss out or impact on your return on investment, your costs. So having that model and then hanging all the right measures underneath it and using that model throughout the site at all different levels is a way of getting goal alignment. So the third thing is having the visions. What are we trying to achieve and by when? Philosophies. How do we want to think? This is similar to the 14 management principles from Toyota. And then finally, policies for improvement. Should we do all improvement in normal work time? Should people only be on one cross-functional team at a time? Having guidelines on how we're going to go on our journey and having those clearly documented and shared with everyone and followed. And finally, you need your site leadership team, improvement leadership team to plan and monitor the progress. We recommend you should be doing it in improvement cycles so people's energy level hangs in there and will be successful with the teams. Any team over 12, 14 weeks, people will lose energy and lose focus. So we want maximum 12, 14 week cycles and have celebration at the end. You want formal weekly review meetings with an agenda structured to make sure you're picking up on any issues as early as possible. And finally, what we call pre-cycle strategy planning sessions. You're sitting down 1 or 2 weeks before the end of the cycle to work out how the cycle's gone, what are the current issues, what's outstanding, where's our priorities, and what should we be doing for next cycle. So we can then, when the cycle finishes, you're in a position to tell people what's next, to keep them motivated and let them see there is direction and guidance from leadership. So it's about getting the structure or leadership right at the site, or the governance at the site. The third point is just having a time frame. What is it that, how much effort do we need to put in on this journey to achieve where we want to get to? Now, we use an operations capability instance to excellence rating at most of our workshops to get people to gauge where their site is at in relation to quality, response, and employee engagement. And we find the average for the last 10 years across Australian industry is about 50% in the rating. Recently, I've been with a few sites and I had a public workshop, and the average was coming in at about 40, which is a bit of a concern. But even if you're at 50 and you want to get to world class, you want to get up to 100%, trying to do it in a realistic time frame where you have an impact, we would suggest about, if you're at 50, probably realistically is go for a 5-year time frame. If you want to bring back to 3 years, you're going to get 25% improvement a year required. This on this assumption it's going to be linear. I think 15 is probably realistic. Yet when you go and talk to most sites and say, what's the budget for next year for improving quality, improving delivery, reducing costs, increasing capacity, most companies sort of budget for about 5%. We really need to be looking at 15. So we've got to be setting stretch targets for our improvement teams and be working on the constraints and the bottlenecks so we have the biggest impact. So getting that clarity in what you're trying to do is very important. The next one is setting a baseline of, so you can look at, are we having the impact we expect and we want? So setting a baseline is very, very important. So you, first of all, obviously agree on your key success factors, like we've shown you, and then work out what are the relevant performance measures under each key success factor that we should be monitoring, what's the definition we have, and then from a monitoring perspective, and for putting a baseline together, what's the time frame we use? We recommend about 6 weeks, the 6 weeks, previous 6 weeks average for when you set your baseline. If you go back too far, you may have been doing some improvements, and you sort of, because of the changes you've made, it's not that relevant. If you're measuring something on a monthly basis, maybe you go back 3 months. That's sort of our learning. But yeah, picking a time frame. You also probably want to look at those rating sheets and saying, well, okay, let's look at those each 12 months. Let's get people to go and redo the operations rating or the maintenance rating every 12 months and just see what impact we're having. So they're the ways of establishing yourself. So the second thing, once you put that model together, get the base out, go get the measures, find out what you're currently running at, and what your ratings have been from your workshops. Then once you've got stake in the ground, let's go out there and look at what would be world-class. What should world-class be or look like for us if we have the 5-year time frame? Now, you can do that using four methods. Absolutes, in other words, we want 0 accidents or 100% delivery. Calculated, our OEE, based on the number of setups we've got to do, how much planned downtime we've got to have, hence how many ramp-ups we're going to have, what our yield losses when we start up. We can calculate, based on those assumptions, what the OEE ideal should be, and then we can set ourselves a target. So we can do that calculated. We might use benchmarks. We know for certain, like for example, maintenance costs, when you go down the TPM path and are successful at it, if you're starting as an average company where you haven't introduced it before, you can typically expect your maintenance costs to cut by about 50% once you're fully implemented. And we've seen that at many sites. So that's a way of using a benchmark. And finally, sometimes with yield and other issues, you might need to use get statistical process control chart going and take the upper control limit as the target for 5 years out. So various ways of doing it, but you set that. Then it's just extrapolating over the years. Use 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can do that either linear extrapolation, exponential up, or exponential down, depending on what it is you're working on. For example, maintenance costs, initially you probably won't see much impact for the first few years, but then at the end it will start to be quite exponentially up quite rapidly. Whereas sometimes with quality, because you're tackling that up front, you might see a big impact initially, and then it'll get harder and harder as you get to the end. So you make your extrapolations based on what you think is going to work. Then you've got a model each year. You see, did we get our targets? If we didn't, what have we learned? What do we need to do differently for next year? Okay, moving on. 5, improvement visions, or the role of visions, very, very important. So if we think about just a very simple slide here that we've used previously, a manager organizes people to get things done. A leader takes people to new heights. In other words, a leader helps you to improve, to take you to different directions. And we do that by looking at or having a vision of where we want to get to. So without a vision, we can't take people to new heights. So having a vision is very, very important. So we talk about improvement vision in our model, and a vision we defined as what do you want to become, so measurable, and by when, time frame. And we know the most successful companies and the most successful people have the longest time perspective in what they're looking at. So therefore, when we set our visions, we want them to be not the vision for next week, but mainly the vision for, say, 3 years out or 5 years out is the lead you to being the most successful. So Joel Barker, who's done the videos that we use, the Business of Paradigms, also has a video, Power of Vision. And he, in his Power of Vision video, talks about vision without action. In other words, let's all have a great vision, but if we don't have an action plan behind it, it's just a dream. If we have all these actions that we want to do, but we don't have a clear vision of where we're really heading to, you're just really passing the time. And then vision with action. So having clear vision, what you want to achieve, with an action plan to support that, you can change the world. So apart from your company vision, to strive for operational excellence, there's a need for an improvement vision. So, and I'll talk about that. I'll give you an example of that in a minute. We also look at operator. How do we want to operate the place? How do we want to develop, operator excellence vision is, what sort of operators do we want? Do we want operators that come to work and just do what they're told? Or do we want operators who are like Formula One drivers who are continually monitoring the performance of their equipment and striving for excellence with the support of their pit crew and their team, so with the support of their maintenance and quality support people, etc. So what's our vision of developing the skills of an operator? What's our operations vision? How do we want to structure operations? What do we want to strive for in operations, etc. And finally, maintenance. What's our maintenance? Because that's very, very important. Maintenance are critical for an operational excellence journey, especially if you're doing the TPM part of it. So as an example of a vision, and I'll use a 5-year improvement vision. So that's what we should be aiming for on our, we set our time frame to be 5 years. So an example, 5 years, achieve our world-class targets for all the key success factors and goal-aligned performance measures and ratings that we did. So on that baseline sheet we talked about, our target is, hey, we want to get there in 5 years' time. It's measurable. We want all our people engaged, at least 10% of their normal work time doing ongoing improvement activities to keep the fires burning, to sustain what we're doing. Now we don't do that day one, but you progressively develop and get more and more people involved in improvement as an ongoing part of their job. And finally, maybe getting external recognition that we are world class in organic or ongoing improvement. So, for example, by gaining level 5 of CTPM's 5-level milestone excellence award. Now, we established that back in, I think, 2002. We've had over 39 or 40 awards we've given over the years. We have it as milestones, so you go from level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to allow sites to monitor how they're progressing on the journey. It's a way for corporate to compare sites rather than trying to compare measures. You compare what levels they're up to. Banpu, Lampang open cut coal mine in Thailand was the first site to achieve level 5. What they did, which we thought was a bit unique, we give a little award is just about a foot high or 300 meters high. It's not a massive thing. When they got their level 2, they're excited. They took the trophy back to their site. Then they thought, well, we need to get everyone engaged and involved if we want to get to level 5. So they built a large replica in the front of their mine site office, and then they got everyone out there to say we're going to be the first site to achieve level 5 in their group, and they were. When they that mine actually closed down some time after achieving the level 5 because it ran out of coal. That's what happens in the mining industry. Meanwhile, they had some big mines, or much bigger mines in Indonesia. So they took some of their people from the Lampang site in Thailand and moved them to Indonesia and helped the Indonesian sites. And they, again, said, we want to achieve level 5, beat the site in Thailand. Lo and behold, after level 4, they came and built their replica of the Excellence Award. And, sometime later, they achieved their level 5. 12 months later, they got the level 5. So, yes, you can use that as a motivational tool. You don't really need to build a monument in your front of your factory, but having an excellence award is a way of motivating people. Next one. How disciplined and structured should we be? Well, Tom Peters wrote the book In Search of Excellence back in 1982, way before the Lean book started to come, like the machine that changed the world in 1990, etc. He's been around for a long time, and he was talking in New Zealand in 2014, and I noticed at the leading international maintenance conference in America later this year, he's just been announced as the guest keynote speaker. And the message he gave in New Zealand was, I thought, a very powerful one, saying, why should business be different from other walks of life? And he goes on and says, if you want to strive for excellence, it's just like the football team striving for the win the premiership, or the basketball team, or the opera, or the theatre, or whatever. If you're going to be striving for excellence, you've got to be pretty serious about it. You've got to use the stats, use analysis, use the discipline, be disciplined. You don't, not turn up for training or say, oh, well, I only train for, once this week, not twice, or whatever. You have very structured, disciplined approach, and you use teams to reinforce the discipline. So you work as a team, so the team reinforces everyone's involvement, etc. And that's why we always have rules for teams and with consequences. Like if you don't turn up, or you turn up late, or your phone goes off, you've got to bring a packet of biscuits or some treats to the next meeting. So discipline needs to be supported with fun and celebration. That's the key to it, if you're going to be serious about your journey. And the other one is that if we look at the 10 integrated ingredients of Australasian TPM, which has been covered in previous webinars, you've got to be disciplined about this. You've got to get the preparation to free up the production time. You've got to have effective daily management and effective structures and frontline leaders. And you need to stabilise the production plan, and you need to increase OEE using cross-functional teams to free up time. Then you've got to get the maintenance people free. You can't load them up with defects from the operators if you haven't freed up their time, and you've got to get their capability up. Then you need production. You need to make sure your operators know how to operate equipment properly, and that they have the discipline to sort out their work area and communicate across the shifts, etc., before you let them loose on the equipment. So again, the success of TPM is very much on a disciplined, structured approach. And finally, getting to accountability, what is the key roles? Well, obviously the leadership team members, the site leadership team members, absolutely critical, whether it be the site or area leadership teams later on, but ensure the development of their people. The leaders have to ensure the development of the people. It's not like, people go and get an improvement manager or an improvement coordinator and they say, oh, you're in charge of improvement. Well, hang on, no, they're the enabler. They are enabler, they teachers, etc. But it's the frontline, the management have to take responsibility for the care and growth of their people. And that's why when you have a leadership team, operational excellence leadership team meeting, it's the managers reporting on the progress of the improvement teams in their area, not the coordinator. The coordinator, they've got to be ensure they're the successful project management of the operational excellence transformation and provide teaching and facilitation support to the leaders of the improvement teams and the team members. However, as the teacher, they can't be held totally responsible for the development of your people. Like if the manager doesn't release people for their training or their development or being involved in the teams or the activities, it doesn't matter how good your coordinator is, you're not going to get anywhere. So very important. And frontline leaders. These are, like I said, your wages, leading hands or team leaders, provide ongoing training and development of their frontline people. So they've got to have time to do that, and they've got to be trained in that and be developed. And the people who need to develop them are your frontline level 1 salary leaders, like your supervisors. They've got to provide the ongoing training and development of their frontline leaders. And then the level 2 salary leaders, for example, the managers, provide ongoing training and development of their level 1 salary leaders and mentor their frontline leaders. So do you have written in your job descriptions that you expect your frontline leaders, your salary, level 1 salary and level 2 salary leaders to be teachers and have the skills to do that? So getting clear roles is very, very important, and having people understand what their role is in the operational excellence transformation and having them clearly documented. Okay. Bit over time, sorry about that, but just summing up, take a holistic approach rather than cherry picking the CI tools. Establish proper governance through a site operational excellence leadership team or CI team or whatever you want to call it. Establish your time frame and rate of improvement required, and make sure everyone understands what that time frame is. Establish your baseline, starting point, and yearly targets so you can monitor progress. Establish and share your improvement vision, along with your operations vision, operator vision, and maintenance vision. So there is a clear direction and purpose to your operational excellence transformation. Discipline is critical. So is having fun and celebrating. Roles and responsibilities for improvement need to be clearly documented, explained, and reinforced until they are embedded. So they're the 7 things we think, and hopefully you can reflect on that and say, have we done that? Have we done that really well? Or do we need to go back and do some of these things and get these things embedded to help us on our improvement journey or transformation? Yeah, how can we help? Putting this webinar together prompted me to pull out an old eTech article about corporate governance of the improvement journey, and what I'm doing is turning it into a booklet, which is just about finished. So that's something that might help. That's available free to our members, or can be purchased for non-members from our webpage. It should be up by the end of the day, and we'll let you know about that. We have obviously a lot of other range of support materials available to support you on your journey, as in booklets and team member manuals and workbooks. And also those in New South Wales, if you want some help or assistance in facilitating or getting some team improvement activity going, we can do that with support from the Smart and Skills funding. So typically most of the cost is covered for us to come along and help you to demonstrate and transfer our knowledge into your improvement people. With that, thank you for attending. Hope you found it of some help to your ongoing operational excellence transformation. And if you have any questions, happy to take questions now, or you're most welcome to email me or phone me after the webinar if anything comes up that you wish to discuss. Again, thank you and have a great rest of the day.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. So as Ross said, if you have any questions, you please raise your hand, press the raise your hand button now, or type in your questions, and he'll be happy to respond to those questions. And while we wait for any questions, if they come through, just a reminder that a link to the recording of today's webinar will be provided in a follow-up email to you later today. So please feel free to share it with your colleagues. It doesn't seem like we have any questions, Ross, and due to a bit over time, so we'll just wrap that up for today. So thank you everyone for attending, and as Ross said, feel free to contact us at any time if you have any questions on today's session. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day. See you later.